live in interesting times. Today's stories. Nigeria's President Buhari denies that he is a clone. France's Le Pen calls for an end to the strategy of confrontation. Rain worsens the conditions of displaced Syrians in the north. Arnold Schwarzenegger calls for climate action. Trump wants talks with Putin and Xi to end arms race. Plus, a glimpse at the only official royal palace in the United States. Hello everyone, I am Jennifer Polentan, bringing you stories from around the globe, and this is Eagle News, Washington, D.C. His spokesman said Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari on Sunday quashed a rumor stemming from his ill health that he had died and been replaced by a look-alike imposter from Sudan.
There's one important question. I seem to forget about it because the answers of that question must be ignorant and irreligious. Somebody says that I'm cloned. A lot of people hoped that I was dead and hoped I died. And poor Vice President, I understand some people have started, in fact, asking for his office whether he should consider them for being the Vice President because I was dead. It's really me, I assure you.
He was answering a question from the audience about repeated claims, spread via tweets, Facebook posts, and YouTube videos, that the leader of Africa's most populous nation was an imposter called Jubril. He referred to those who started the rumor as ignorant and irreligious. Buhari, who is seeking re-election next year, spent a large part of 2017 in London for treatment for a serious illness, which has never been revealed to the public. A lack of specific information about the illness, along with Buhari's gaunt features and a reduction in public appearances, have fed speculation about his well-being. Claims about the president's identity emerged a month after Buhari returned from another lengthy medical trip to London. Those pushing the rumor were known critics of the president and his government. Marine Le Pen, leader of France's far-right national rally, meets with Prime Minister Edouard Philippe and urges him to end the strategy of confrontation chosen by Emmanuel Macron for the past 3 weeks. She and other opposition leaders met with Philippe today after another weekend of violent protests.
Nous avons donc passé une demi-heure avec le Premier ministre. Nous lui avons expliqué notre position, à savoir qu'à notre avis, il ne restait que quelques heures pour mettre fin à la stratégie de la confrontation qui a été choisie par Emmanuel Macron depuis maintenant près de 3 semaines. Qu'il fallait immédiatement qu'il annonce la suppression de l'augmentation des taxes sur l'essence et le gasoil. La majorité à l'Assemblée nationale n'est qu'une illusion compte tenu du mode de scrutin, qui est un mode de scrutin tout à fait injuste. On a une illusion de majorité, mais cette illusion de majorité ne cache pas le fait que les Français sont en désaccord, non seulement avec le niveau de l'impôt, mais également avec la manière dont on dépense l'impôt. J'ai profité évidemment de cette occasion pour dire au Premier ministre que le Président s'apprêtait d'ici une semaine à signer le pacte de Marrakech qui organise la submersion migratoire de notre pays et que les Français ne comprendront pas que l'on continue à accepter dans notre pays des centaines de milliers de migrants et d'immigrés économiques.
French leader Emmanuel Macron faced growing pressure on Monday to find a way out of the worst crisis of his presidency after shocking scenes of rioting over taxes in Paris during the weekend. As dozens of people were brought to court over the worst clashes in central Paris in decades on Saturday, Macron's government was preparing its response. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe, who canceled a scheduled trip to Poland, met the heads of the main opposition parties, many of whom sense opportunities in Macron's woes. The president has vowed not to back down on anti-pollution fuel taxes, which sparked the protests in rural France. But on Monday, the government indicated that it might make concessions. 4 people have died in incidents linked to the anti-government protests, which began on November 17th. They include an 80-year-old woman in Marseille who was hit by fragments of a tear gas canister while closing her shutters during riots on Saturday, and later died in the hospital, local prosecutors had said. The protests have snowballed into a broad wave of resistance to Macron's economic reforms, accused of being tilted towards the rich. The front page headline of La Parisienne newspaper demanded on Monday, "Mr. President, we need a response." Macron has not spoken publicly about the destruction in Paris since his return from a G20 summit in Argentina during the weekend. On Monday, he had lunch with police from a Paris barracks that was involved in trying to quell the riots. The 40-year-old centrist was elected in May 2017 on a pro-business platform that included measures to incite companies to invest and to create jobs. Immediately after coming to power, he pushed through tax cuts for entrepreneurs and high earners, measures that have become a lightning rod for anger among the gilets jaunes, or the yellow vests, who have blocked highways around the country in the past 2 weeks. His task is complicated by his own desire not to yield to street protests, which in the past have repeatedly forced his predecessors into U-turns. In a makeshift camp in Sarmada in northern Syria, heavy rains have worsened the living conditions of refugees with children wading in the mud, sometimes preventing them from reaching the tents that are used as classrooms, and when they attend school, they sit on the ground despite the cold and humidity.
أمطار جتنا أمطار غزيرة صار لها أسبوع والحمد لله أمطار غزيرة الطين يعني كثير معاناة يعني فوق ما تتصور يعني المية دخلت على البراكيات ومعاناة شديدة يعني
ما بنقدر نمشي على المدرسة لما بدنا نروح بيطين على الطريق وما يعني ما بنحسن نمشي.
Coming up, Arnold Schwarzenegger calls for climate action. Trump wants talks with Putin and Xi to end arms race. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will be right back. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, Washington, D.C. The former governor of California, Arnold Schwarzenegger, calls for more action to tackle climate change at COP24 in Katowice, Poland.
We have to just, make sure that everyone out there hears the message that every person has to participate in that by buying electric cars, by switching off the lights and the air conditioning when they leave the home, by doing all of the things, having solar panels on your house, whatever it is, they have to participate in order for us to all win this. Just because Donald Trump dropped out of the Paris Agreement, it doesn't mean that America dropped out, because all of our states that were always environmentally friendly, they're still going in the same direction. All of the cities in America are going in the same direction. They're still in the Paris Agreement. Clean technology creates huge amount of jobs, and the bottom line really is that we don't have to choose between one or the other. You can protect the environment and protect the economy at the same time. That's what we've shown in California, and look at the success we have had. Our economy is booming. We have the 5th largest economy in the world. Think about it. Our economy is stronger than France's and Italy's and all of them. And we are environmentally far ahead of all those places.
Nations facing imminent environmental disaster called on rich polluters on Monday to help them back from the brink, as the UN warned the world's plan to avoid climate catastrophe was way off course. From glaciers melting in Nepal to the rising seas threatening to engulf small island states, the world is already experiencing the damage lying in wait if global warming is allowed to run unchecked. Nearly 200 nations gathered in Poland on Monday for the start of the COP24 summit, where they must agree on a universal rulebook to make good on the promises they made in the 2015 Paris climate deal. President Bijya Devi Bahardi told delegates, quote, "Nepal is a country comprised of mountains and plains. We have been bearing the brunt of disproportionate impact of climate change despite being a low-carbon emitting country," unquote. The Paris Agreement vowed to limit global temperature rises to under 2 degrees Celsius or 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and to the safer cap of 1.5 degrees Celsius if at all possible. For this, richer nations must provide funding, $100 billion per year by 2020, to steer developing countries towards greener energy while drastically drawing down their own emissions. But developing nations have complained that richer states, responsible for the vast majority of historic fossil fuel use, aren't doing enough to help them adapt to the warming planet. Trust in the Paris process has been badly undermined by U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to renege on his country's commitment, and there are fears the political will to act is waning as negotiations drag on. Not a single G20 nation sent a type-level representative to the COP on Monday. U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday proposed talks with the leaders of China and Russia aimed at halting what he described as an uncontrollable arms race. Trump's comment follows an October announcement in which he said he would withdraw from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, or the INF, a Cold War deal with Russia to cut missile numbers. Critics say the move, which has not been finalized, would spark a new arms race with Russia. Trump at the time said he would build up America's nuclear stockpile until people came to their senses. In an early morning Monday tweet, the president said, "I am certain that, at some time in the future, President Xi and I, together with President Putin of Russia, will start talking about a meaningful halt to what has become a major and uncontrollable arms race. The U.S. spent $716 billion this year. Crazy," he added. Trump's tweet came on the heels of a weekend meeting with Xi during a G20 summit in Argentina, during which the leaders called a truce on an intensifying trade war between their two powerhouse countries. While Trump canceled a scheduled bilateral meeting with Putin in Buenos Aires, the two did have an informal conversation at the summit. The 1987 INF deal did not cover China and was designed to eliminate short and intermediate range missiles on Europe's doorstep. A date for the U.S. withdrawal from the treaty has yet to be pinpointed, leaving room for a possible fix that would likely also have to involve China. Trump's decision to withdraw from the INF has raised global concerns, and administration officials have been engaged in an aggressive public relations campaign with European leaders and the press to explain the move. They say it is necessary because Russia has long been violating the INF. Trump's reference to the Defense Department's crazy $716 billion budget underscores something of an about-face for the president. He came into office last year saying the vast U.S. military is suffering massive shortages and vowed a great rebuilding of the armed services. Republicans and military leaders have for years bemoaned Obama-era cuts. They said that went too far and hurt U.S. capabilities, especially in the face of Chinese and Russian military expansions. Despite a much-touted increase in defense spending this year, Trump now appears to be balking at the price tag and recently told the Pentagon to find 5% in savings, sending service chiefs scrambling to find areas to cut. The U.S. spends more on defense annually than the next 7 countries combined. When we come back, a glimpse at the only official royal palace in the United States. Eagle News, Washington, D.C. will return shortly. This is Eagle News, Washington, D.C., and I am Jennifer Polintan. According to its official website, Iolani Palace is a living restoration of a proud Hawaiian national identity. Now registered as a National Historic Landmark, it is the only official royal palace in the United States. Eagle News correspondent Mio Acenas with the details.
Surrounded by modern buildings in downtown Honolulu is a centuries-old structure that stands as an enduring symbol of all things Hawaii. This is Iolani Palace.
Iolani Palace was built by our last reigning king, David Kalakaua, and it was built in 1879. And for its time, it was ahead of its time. And it's a well-known fact that Iolani Palace has some of the most amazing pieces of art within the palace that largely came as a result of Kalakaua's world travels. He was the first monarch to circumnavigate the globe. The palace was the first to have plumbing and electricity before even the White House.
The first floor consists of public reception areas such as the Grand Hall, State Dining Room, and Throne Room. The second floor contains of the King's and Queen's private suites, and even a music room. Sadly, January 17, 1893 would be the darkest moment in Hawaii's history, as the last monarch, Queen Liliuokalani, was overthrown by American businessmen with the help from the federal government. The palace also features the imprisonment room, where the Queen was placed under house arrest following the overthrow of her government.
There was a ceremony on the grounds of this palace where they lowered the Hawaiian flag and they raised the American flag. And it has been a struggle ever since for Hawaiians to regain their identity, to regain their sovereignty. And the palace has become a symbol of that.
After the monarchy, Iolani Palace became the headquarters for the provisional government. It also served as the capital building for the Republic, the territory, and eventually the state of Hawaii. Government offices finally vacated the palace in 1969 and moved to the current state capitol building. The symbol of Hawaiian culture now needed a lot of work for renovations and restoration.
A group of very conscientious community leaders, including my mother, got together and said, we can't allow this to happen. And so they started the very, very difficult process of restoring the palace and trying to go search the world for all of these artifacts that had been dispersed far and wide, bring them back to Hawaii and place them in this palace. It was a very difficult job. It required a lot of funding and a lot of government support, but the result is what we have today.
At present, Iolani Palace is open to the public, Monday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Once a month, the palace is also open on Sundays, offering complimentary tickets for Kama'aina guests. To qualify, all you need is a Hawaii driver's license, state ID, or an active duty U.S. military ID.
They can walk the grounds of this palace where the Royal Hawaiian Band played, where the King's coronation took place, where the Queen's coronation took place, where the overthrow of the monarchy happened. It is a very, very sacred place, and these are hallowed grounds. And I always tell people, if you want to know about Hawaii, its history and its culture, come to Iolani Palace.
From Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Mio Asenes with Eagle News. I'm 1 with 25.
Thanks, Mio. That is today's Eagle News Washington, D.C. Join us tomorrow for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at Eaglenews.PH and EagleNewsLive.com. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/EagleNewsPH. Thank you for watching. I am Jennifer Politan and I am 1 with 25.